What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 174 on this Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman and more, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Happy Valentine's Day, a day late to everybody. This is a good start to the week. It's going to be busy finish to the week, though. This week has gotten hairy all of a sudden, hasn't it?
Yeah, we went from it's Diamond Sports season, baby, and oh my gosh, Oklahoma took a defibrillator to themselves last night at the Lloyd Noble Center to we're going to talk to a lot of football players on Thursday, which is good, but it's just random.
It's February Media Day. It's how wonderful is it to have Media Day in February? When has that ever happened before? Never. It's unbelievable.
Now it's the standard. The best is the standard. This is the best. We expect this from now on.
Every year.
Yeah. Brent Venables for 40 minutes or whatever, which it'll go over because it always does. And then, 20 plus players coming your way on Thursday, tomorrow. It's going to be a scene, and we're going to have a ton for you at AllSooners. You know that. We're going to cover that thing as best we can. We're going to try and get every player if we can. That's the goal. It's going to be a challenge, but that's the goal. That's coming up tomorrow. It is Valentine's Day post because Ryan and I, we got to spend our great Valentine's Day at Lloyd Noble Center, the most romantic place on earth, last night. And OU actually played pretty well. They got a win. We'll talk about that a little later on. But how about that? Maybe that team's not dead just yet. But we move on. We press on. We're making it through February.
I think I show you outside. How about that? That's what that sounded like.
Well, I think it's more
AllSooners outside.
More maybe not dead yet, but they're definitely infected by the fungus in The Last of Us. This is a zombie Oklahoma basketball team walking around. So
they keep coming back to life, don't they?
Yeah, no one's popped them in the head yet to totally end it, but zombie Sooners basketball is meandering about.
That line last night, they were favored by 1.5, and everybody was like, what is that? How are they favored at home? But you got to just know when Vegas puts out just a stinky, smelly line like that, they just know. Don't know how they know, but they know. They know you rolled last night. We'll talk about that later on the show, like I said. We do have some football, of course, to talk about. I think you probably can guess where we're going to start and where we're going to dive in this first segment. Last week, we're talking about, all this reports that the television networks aren't thrilled. OU and Texas may be stuck until 2025. And then kaboom, comes out officially official, no more anything. It is done deal. It is happening. July 1st, 2024, Oklahoma and Texas are moving to the SEC. A year early, that means one more football season, one more everything season after these ones wrap up, one more academic year, and then the conference change will finally happen. Reaction. We'll dive into all angles of it here on the show. That's what we're here for, but when this drops and it's finally official, your first thought that popped in your brain is as this is actually going to happen here in next summer.
Yeah. So you talked to Joe Castiglione for the past year and a half, right? You talked to even I don't know. You hear from Joe Harris. Maybe you talk to Brett Yormark, the new commissioner, or you talk to old Bob Bowlesby, which I did last summer. 2025, 2025, 2025, 2025.
Right.
Never said in my head, never once did it sit in my head that it was going to happen in 2025. Fast forward to last week before, I should say, if we're going this on a week-to-week basis, where all the reports came out and said, well, that looks like it. It's definitely happened in 2025. The TV networks aren't satisfied. Fox is getting screwed out of too much inventory, too many games. This thing's going to happen in 2025. I looked at that and I said, no, prove it to me. Let me see the documents. Let me see the signatures on the bottom of the papers. I don't believe it. I still think it's happening in 2024. Not a week later, guys. Not a week later. Officially. We're leaving in 2024. I told y'all 100 times. It's annoying to be right all that time.
My first thought was just the process of how it happened last, what was that, Thursday? Where in the morning, I shoot Boss a text that's like, hey, we probably need to be on the lookout for this. I'm hearing that this could be announced like today. And I was even a little like, could
What
you
was my
check?
reply?
I
What was my
was like,
immediate response?
yeah, and in my head, I was like, can you check on this? Because I'm not totally sure. Boss's response was, quote, no way.
No way.
No way. And I was like, I don't know. Then later in the day, Josh is hearing the same stuff. And then, of course, it happens like after I'm done on my radio show and I'm like, I'm on I-35 South and I get the tweet notification. I think Ross Dellinger beat the Big 12 by like 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And I looked down at my watch. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, thank goodness Josh was there. But no, this was the logical conclusion for everyone but Fox, pretty much. The Big 12 is ready to close that chapter, right? They didn't want to have to do the headache of 2 years of the 14-team conference. Because like when you look at the scheduling nightmare that was the schedule's done, okay, now it's being pushed back. Now it's being pushed back again. Okay, well, imagine having the infighting again next year, because it's another year that the Big 12 can't get on whatever their future rotation is going to be because they're having to shoehorn OU and Texas into the schedule one more time. That was going to be a headache. On the SEC's perspective, USC and UCLA coming in 2024, the college football playoff expansion happening in 2024. It just makes perfect sense for college football to turn this massive page all the same year, just on the landscape of it. OU and Texas, obviously. And so really it was just figuring out with Fox what was going on. And I think part of the frustration is that I'd been told initially that Fox had contingently agreed a couple of weeks back and then came back and said, actually, never mind. And then everyone had to throw their hands up and be like, fine, this happened. And then so they got back to the drawing board. Oklahoma and Texas and Fox and the Big 12 all got together with what can you budge on, what won't you budge on. And we've started to see Texas and Michigan are flipping a home and home so that Fox can be happy. There was another report, forgive me, so much of the stuff came out. I think Thamel reported that Michigan thing. Somewhere else I read that it's on the table that Texas and Oklahoma add a premier non-conference series with another Big Ten school maybe down the line. So it'll be interesting to see all that. But now we have our answers, July 1st, 2024. Into the SEC. So now the question is going to be SEC scheduling model that's going to get sorted out here over the next month as the SEC's meeting, and looking forward to what this new landscape is going to be. And if Oklahoma's ready now we have the date, will they be ready to make that transition?
Yeah, like you said, it works for everybody. Big 12 got paid in this deal. $100 million is what is going to come from Oklahoma and Texas. It was not clear at all in the release exactly where that money is coming from and how it's going to go.
Yeah.
It said part of it would be from future revenues. So that would imply to me, my understanding would be that Oklahoma and Texas can continue to pay this off as they go, or they're going to just save money, I guess. The Big 12 is not going to pay them as much. Is that how you guys take it?
My understanding is, first off, of the $100 million, about $20 million is going to Fox. I think Dellinger reported that. So the remaining $8 are going to get $80 million. It's going to be paid over 2 years, and it's not like Oklahoma and Texas are cutting a check. It's like a withholding from your payout from the Big 12.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been characterized as a penalty and a fee and all this stuff. It's not a penalty, it's not a fee. They're going to withhold that revenue from Oklahoma and Texas over the next 2 years.
So Big 12 gets some extra coinage, like Ryan referenced. They get the Texas-Michigan game in 2024. That game was supposed to be in Austin. Now it's in Ann Arbor, which means it'll be a Big 10 broadcast rights, which means Fox will take it. So they get an extra game out of this that they otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So, it worked out for everybody. Oklahoma and Texas want to go early for obvious reasons. Big 12 gets paid. And like Ryan said, Big 12 needs to close that chapter and start to prove that they can be their own conference without these guys. And so that's what they'll start to do in 2024. If you wrote the column the day that this was announced, is Oklahoma ready? And so I wanted to ask you guys that, lay it out. Because that's I was kind of a little surprised the fan reaction to this, because it felt like to me that most of the fan reaction was kind of a little bit of a nervous that this was maybe not the right move. Maybe they should have just taken their time and given Brent Venables more time to recruit, more time to get this thing going. Because now you're going after one more football season. They are going to be playing in the SEC. Is Oklahoma going to be ready when that time comes, or is this a mistake in your guys' opinion, as far as from a competitive standpoint, whenever that time comes?
Yeah, how's this for a lousy parallel for you? This would be like going through your junior high time, right? And you're thinking, I can't wait to get to high school. I can't wait to get to high school. All of a sudden, you're done with junior high, and you wake up, and it's summertime, and all that's ahead of you is your final summer, and then you start high school, and you're like, oh crap, I've been looking forward to this for so long. Am I ready for this?
Yeah.
That to me kind of characterizes what Oklahoma and Texas are getting ready to step into. They think they're ready. They can't wait to get there. It's going to be fun, man. But there's going to be seniors there. There's going to be big muscled up juniors that like hang them over the stairs and shake money out of their pockets and steal their, you know what I mean? They're going to get bullied around at first. Couple of years, they're going to be up there with the big boys. Are they ready right now? No, they're not ready right now. Oklahoma was 6-7 last year. Texas was 9-4. Is that what they did after their bowl game?
Yeah.
They're not ready right now. Football wise, other programs obviously would be able to slide right into the SEC and compete. But football wise, Oklahoma and Texas, ask Brent Venables this tomorrow at the press conference, and he'll tell you the same thing. He would say, no, we've got a lot of recruiting still to do. We've got a lot of growing still to do. We've got a lot of building facilities still to do. Now, here's the deal. All those things are underway, but they're not at a point right now where they can just step in and say, we're SEC ready.
Yeah, put on your crimson-colored glasses for a second and just assume, hey, Oklahoma's coaching staff, we haven't seen it. That's going to be the big question in year 2 is you had year 0, year 1, where you were trying to pit square pegs into round holes. It didn't work out so well, but you ripped that Band-Aid off. This is where you have to see the development in year 2. It's why we talked about with the schedule release. There are high expectations despite the fact that Oklahoma was bad last year. Why? Because you took 3 losses off the schedule and subbed that for group of 5 rosters. Even under the best case scenario, Oklahoma is going to enter the SEC with a redshirt freshman quarterback who probably hasn't started many games. That's if you get your best case scenario, crimson colored glasses, Oklahoma skyrockets, bounces back. They put in 10 wins. They play in a Big 12 championship. That's best case scenario. And that's still your reality headed to the SEC is that you're going to be probably replacing your number 1 receiver in Jalil Farouk. If that's what happens, you're going to be replacing Dylan Gabriel with Jackson Arnold, who's got all the talent, but won't have started games if that huge development arc happens. And then what you need is, okay, you need to see a ton of those freshmen play this year defensively because you need to see that talent start to come through so that athletically Oklahoma can hang. That's a lot to ask of this program in 12 months coming off of a 6-7 season. It is. And we've seen big jumps before. Shoot, every coaching hire in the mid 2000s was the Bob Stoops thing, right? He came in year 1, ripped off the Band-Aid, year 2, win a national championship, the sleeping giant thing, that became whatever. You head to the SEC, like what's going to compete in the SEC is stacking top 5 classes, not just getting 1 top 5 class over a 5-year period, getting 3 top 5 classes, and the other 2 are hanging out at like 7 and 10 in the ranking. Like that's how you stack that roster to truly compete. Right now, if Oklahoma continues on this path, they're going to be on the best case scenario Florida arc, the LSU arc, maybe the Auburn arc of you get 1 special class, develop that for 4 or 5 years, then you can compete. What the SEC offers you is that those years your expectations national championship as opposed to just good year playoff run, stuff like that. But that's best case scenario for OU right now. That can change if this development arc happens, but that's what Oklahoma's entering the SEC on. And there's still the huge question mark of, does this coaching staff have it? Because we've just seen 1 year and it was 6-7.
Quick question for you, Ryan. If you're playing a bunch of freshmen in 2023 to get those guys ready for the future, are you going to win 10 games in 2023?
Yeah, that's it. It depends on what spots that's at, right? If we're talking about, hey, Peyton Bowen comes in and plays at safety alongside Billy Bowman, PJ Adewore comes in and is, on the edge. If a corner comes in, maybe. If we're talking about, hey, Caden Green had to come in or like a Jackson Arnold had to come in because someone got hurt or things like that, then you start scratching your head going, wait a minute, that's not exactly what you wanted. Because if you're talking about a ton of freshmen, what you'd want to see, best case scenario, is maybe Jaquays Petaway comes in as a burner at wide receiver. You've got PJ Adebore getting similar snaps to like an R. Mason Thomas last year. You have maybe one of those freshmen competing with Key Lawrence for time at the safety opposite of Billy Bowman, and then you've got a corner across from Woody Watt. Like that's best case. That's what you want to see. But
supplemental snaps.
Yeah. If we get to post Texas and the Band-Aid rips off and you start seeing 8 true freshmen getting tied, that's probably not a good thing. It's probably in the same spot we were a year ago where we're saying the season's over for what Oklahoma standards are. Why not play the freshmen and see what you got? That is not the you're ready for the SEC in 2024 pathway to getting freshman time.
Yeah, completely agree. We need to also talk about the scheduling model. You mentioned it, Ryan, and we don't know what it's going to be, but doesn't it make sense that there's only going to be one real solution to this, integrating two more teams to bring your total to 16? There's an opportunity there to the hard part is going to be for me. The hard part is going to be getting all 16 teams to agree that these are their 3 permanent rivals.
Yeah.
Everybody's on board with playing 9 games, I think. Everybody's on board with rotating the other 12 teams through twice every 4 years. You get to play somebody twice every 4 years. You don't have to go through this Georgia thing where they 11 years into being conference brethren with Texas A&M, they still have not been to College Station. 11 years.
Makes no sense.
So
yeah.
That's got to change. So everybody's on board with the 3 permanent rivals and the 9 conference games and rotating the other 12 teams in twice every 4 years. That's a great idea. There is no way you're going to be able to get everybody to agree. Yes, those are definitely our 3 permanent conference rivals, and we'll play them every year happily. No one is going to agree to all that. Everybody wants to play this team. Everybody wants to play that team. Everybody wants to avoid playing a certain team, if you know what I mean. That's going to be the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say the College Football Inquirer podcast, which I know we at least have 2 big fans of that here. I don't know if Josh, if you hammer the College Football Inquirer or not. I know Hoover turned me onto it, but Ross Dellinger basically said if you looked into the COVID season of the SEC schedule when they had to schedule a larger conference slate, there's a nice historical line that goes through about half of the conference. You have a clear top half and a clear bottom half of the SEC, just historically wise in football. And he said that basically, if you looked at it, no one's going to admit to it, but the schedule was made where it was pretty equitable. Like you didn't just load up Missouri with the entire top half, like they tried to mix and match. And so what Ross Dellinger had hypothesized is that you're going to have the teams that are in the top half, like Oklahoma, they're going to take 2 other teams in that top half and then one of the bottom half. If you're in the bottom half, you're going to take 2 of those bottom half, one of the upper. So for Oklahoma, it makes a ton of sense. Texas and Missouri, welcome to the show. For A&M, they're not going to want to play Oklahoma, Texas, and LSU. They've got this thing going with LSU the last decade in the SEC. It's not like a huge rivalry, but it's something. So if you're Arkansas, do you want to draw OU and Texas every single year? Would you rather have Missouri and Texas and somebody else? That's why I think that Ross Dellinger has floated Florida out there. Is it could be OU playing Texas, Missouri, and then you just have to randomly grab Florida as someone from the top half. And
I saw Andy Staples had the same model, same 3.
Yeah, Andy Staples had the same model, and I had been told that hey, Florida might be a thing. That's not just guessing. That might be how that thing gets drawn up. So that'll be pretty interesting. As Norman to Gainesville is the largest separation in 2 cities in the SEC per mileage. It just beats out Austin to South Carolina. But there at least is a little bit of shared history between the 2008 National Championship game, the Cotton Bowl. At least there's something there that maybe you can work off of.
They've played each other in other sports a lot as well. Basketball's played them a couple years in a row. Softball rivalries. Yep. Baseball just played them in the tournament last year. Like they seem to kind of find each other a lot of the time.
OU is recruiting. If you look at their 23 class, they've got 5 guys out of the state of Florida. They're recruiting the hell out of Florida right now. So Florida might want a piece of that action. Tell those guys, hey, don't go to them. They're all the way in Oklahoma. You can stay here, play in Florida. The recruiting battles would be awesome if OU played Florida on an annual basis.
My understanding, what I've heard, tea leaves and whatever. Texas obviously is going to be in Oklahoma's pod if that's what they do. I think Missouri is pretty close to a lock to be in Oklahoma's pod. It's the question of that 3rd spot between Arkansas and Florida. I think that's where the deliberations are being made. And I don't know. I've kind of heard a little of both. But I think Texas and Missouri are both pretty set. A&M's not going to be in their pod for the reason Ryan said. A&M would have a cow because Texas is going to be in their pod and LSU is going to be in their pod. So they can't also have OU. They need Vanderbilt or something. They need to lighten that thing up a little bit for them to be okay with it. So that's how I think that's going to go. And we'll see. Get used to some trips to Columbia. Who's been there a time or 2? So everybody's loves on Columbia. Are you with that on Columbia? Who? Everybody? You're not. Yesterday at basketball, everybody was big Columbia love going on.
It's a big J school. All the big J's are like, oh, I can't wait to go back to Columbia. That was the first place I was offered out of high school was University of Missouri. They were impressed with my journalism schools and my journalism skills. And I said, no, I'm staying home. Going to work at the local paper. But no, I've been to Columbia a couple times.
Hey,
I lived in Missouri for 6 months right out of college. Went to Columbia a couple more times. No, I'm out.
Hey, you give me Missouri and like Greek and Gothic columns for no reason, and I'm in.
That's so random. It's so. Hey, look, we got some columns. Awesome. Got a Rockingham and some columns.
Is Missouri Oklahoma's rival? This has been floated around the last couple of days because they've played a lot. There's a lot of games in the history, but this has been talked about as kind of like almost like they've become more of a rival in the time that OU actually hasn't been playing them. It's like they're remembered as a rival even though they weren't at the time. That's been talked about.
They were in the same conference.
Yeah,
there are no more rivals than Iowa State or Kansas State.
Wow, it's like do you want to go off of like at one point the Peace Pipe Trophy was you know what I mean? Like it was like the Big Ten where everyone had a trophy and that kind of sunset.
That's what's missing. That's what the Big 12 has been missing all these years is the little interchangeable trophies that go back and forth. The Bedlam Bell.
Regardless of what the status of it once was, like it's been fun in basketball. The reality is the Big 12, when it formed, not having the foresight to have cross-division protected rivalries, like if OU Nebraska didn't survive, like the OU Nebraska ended, the old version of OU Nebraska ended when the Big 12 was not forward-thinking enough to say, we need OU Nebraska to play every year, even if they're across. And that's what the SEC has done. The SEC has always protected those, and that's how that's been able to sustain and all that history. So if OU Nebraska didn't make it, there's no way that any argument or any shout for OU Missouri should be acknowledged because OU had one huge rivalry with the Big 12 North, and the Big 12 didn't keep it.
Sure. And I think it could become one, but not if Oklahoma just dominates it every year. And so that'd be the question there. Now, on the topic of rivalries, you've got to note, obvious ramification here is that November 4th, 2023, Stillwater, Oklahoma, the last Bedlam for the foreseeable future. We don't know when that series will continue. It probably will at some point, but it's going to be a while. I think we all kind of think that. What a scene that's going to be in Stillwater. It was mayhem 2 years ago when we thought that could have been the last time going to Stillwater. Now this time it will. Like we know it will, at least for a long time. Man, it's going to be nuts. Looking forward to that one. Final trip to Boone. We'll see what happens when we get there.
I'm probably going to wear my roller skating helmet, my son's skateboarding helmet. I don't know. It's just that I've seen those goalposts come down and like crush people. It's going to be ugly. And I'm not saying they're going to win or they're going to lose. I'm just saying the Bedlam will be at the all-time, whatever the highest level of Bedlam has been over the years in any sport, whether it's wrestling or baseball, guys throwing bats at each other and getting the brooms out on top of the dugouts. Whatever you think of Bedlam to this point, forget it. Next year's football game is going to be the all-timer. And I mean, it's holy crap. I can't think of what that place is going to be like.
They could both be 0-9 and they would.
Wow. I was going to say that it's not just the last Bedlam. It's the fact that Trace Ford's coming back. So there's extra juice there. Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy have maybe Mike Gundy more than Oklahoma State have basically stood defiant in the face of what modern college football is and said, I refuse to play the portal game as far as keeping the guys on my roster. So he's bringing a ton of different guys. Oklahoma State's schedule broke really well for them to try and bounce back and still put up a nice win total, despite the fact that just on paper, they lost a lot of talent and made up for it with guys that are coming from smaller schools, stuff. So you're going to have that narrative. For the Cowboys fans, it's like, okay, there was a chance that the last Bedlam memory in Stillwater was Spencer Sanders topples Caleb Williams. The Cowboys are one win away from a college football playoff, euphoria on the field. Now it's your last taste of Bedlam in Norman was the only reason you were in that game because Jeff Lebby refused to run more than 90 seconds off the clock, any possession in the second half. All that, it's going to be an absolute just circus. And here's my challenge to Oklahoma State. I was on the field in Lubbock and I saw a service dog rush the field. If you win that game, I need to see something more iconic, something that will stick with me longer than a service dog on the field.
Like a raccoon or a brown bear or something like that.
God.
Something. I need to see maybe Bullet and BB like just chilling in the middle of it. Just like, hey, Bullet is just at midfield as all the people are swarming, like something.
It was when we were there 2 years ago. It was one of the more memorable games we've had for a lot of reasons. But it was mayhem in there that night, and it'll be like that again. Like who said, even ramped up a little bit probably.
What about Brett Yormark on Bullet with his guns up like this,
Yeah.
and just riding around? He's shooting off Pistol Pete's shotgun and stuff, and he's just riding around after the game.
Here for it. I'm here for that as well.
What a difference.
That would require Oklahoma State to win the game.
Quick point of order. Did you guys see that Pistol Pete scared the living just fire out of the Kansas huddle last night in Gallagher? Because I guess his little like shotgun pop was louder than usual indoors, and like the Kansas huddle at the timeout was like, "Whoa!"
I don't blame him. It is kind of loud. It can sneak up on you a little bit. It's like the guns. Think of the guns that the Roughnecks shoot, but it's inside. It can frighten you a little bit. What a change up in the trips, by the way, that we Stillwater and then Provo are the back-to-back road. That's very different people in a lot of ways. That'll be how we wrap up the season. So let's finish this conversation. Who kind of referenced it earlier, but just to kind of on the way out here, the other sports. Is there anything that jumps out when looking at basketball, men or women, the diamond sports, anything, gymnastics, if you want to get into that, anything else? Any other sport that you think that this is biggest a positive for or biggest negative for? Who do you think is impacted the most by this? Because obviously it's not, football is the headline, but it's for all sports. And for basketball, it's you finish up this season, you get one more. Same for the diamond sports, you do this season, then one more. How's that going to shake out for all the other sports for Oklahoma?
Biggest winner is Porter Moser and the men's basketball team getting out of the Big 12. Although I love the way he hedged it in his post game or in his press conference after the announcement. Hey, these things run in cycles. The Big 10 used to be there.
It's true.
The ACC used to be there. The Big 12 is there now. He didn't say it, but he would like to have said maybe in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the SEC will be there. Maybe. But right now, as it stands right now, getting out of the Big 12 and getting into any other league is good for Oklahoma basketball. Biggest loser is, I'm willing to say it, Josh, they held our feet to the fire after making the championship game last year. I don't care. I'm willing to say it. The SEC is the hardest baseball league by far out there. 8 of the last 13 national championships have been won by SEC teams, and they've put teams in the finals with those championship teams. Biggest loser is going to be baseball. Baseball's got baseball's got the furthest to go. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Where they've got the furthest from a facility standpoint, from NIL standpoint, from everything, the whole big picture. Baseball's going to have the hardest time. I said it last year, and they went to the national championship game. I'll say it again this year.
Yeah, baseball's on the right track, but it now speeds it up. Yeah, you have one less year to get these facility renovations and to continue to build your roster, all that stuff. Kind of like football. It puts, it sped you up a little bit.
Yeah, I think softball's going to be really excited. We know Patty Gasso wants to load up on that more difficult schedule. She kind of referenced it 2 Mondays ago when she was like talking about how hard it is to construct this non-conference schedule. And she kind of threw the throwaway line of that'll be easier in a couple years when like the conference schedules provides. There's no Iowa States or Texas Tech softballs in the SEC. For me, though, baseball, it's just a gauntlet, right? Because college baseball runs through the SEC. But when you look at what Jenny Baranchek is trying to build right now, Baylor is not what Baylor was under Kim Mulkey. Texas is talented, and they've got great rankings, and OU and Texas are probably going to battle down to the wire for the Big 12 championship. But Texas is not like a juggernaut by any means. Just look at what happened this last Sunday in the SEC women's basketball. Undefeated South Carolina versus Kim Mulkey's undefeated LSU. And oh, by the way, South Carolina were clearly a cut above Kim Mulkey's LSU. You're entering a conference that essentially has 2 teams that are the caliber of in the 2010s when OU was trying to climb the mountain over Notre Dame, Stanford, UConn, those caliber of teams, you're going to have two of those already ahead of you in the SEC on top of what Ginny Bronchek's trying to do recruiting wise. Obviously she's, got a 5-star transfer, stuff like that. But I think that's going to be really tough for Oklahoma because they had just got to a spot where they could have been the class of the Big 12. You have to be national championship good to compete at the top of the SEC, and they're just not there yet.
Yeah, and she's going to have to reload the entire roster in 2024. Yeah. I mean, everybody's gone. So that's going to be tough for her. I looked it up, Ryan, when this happened, when I wrote that column, is Oklahoma ready? There's 2 teams ranked, 3 this week, but last week there was 2 teams ranked in the Big 12 and 3 teams ranked in the SEC. What's the difference, Hoove? Why, between 2 and 3? One was ranked 16 and the other was ranked 18, I think, in the Big 12. In the SEC, it was 1, 3, and 5. So your 3 ranked teams are in the top 5 in the SEC. It's just going to be harder. Everything about it is going to be harder.
I mean, South Carolina is UConn. I mean, they have supplanted UConn, and
right.
Dawn Staley is Gino Auriemma. They have taken that throne. So you're going into the conference that has the juggernaut of the sport right now. So that alone, it'd be cool if they come to Norman, which you figure at some point they will. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be weird. It's going to be fun. It's going to be weird. One more full season around the horn for all the sports. One last kumbaya and all that, and that'll be it. The final time. It'll be weird going through next year knowing everything's for the final time. Final Big 12, championship game in football, possibly final Big 12 tournaments. It'll just be weird. But yeah, we finally know for sure. July 1st, 2024. And like Porter Moser said this week, at the very least, it offers OU some clarity. That's the word that he used a bunch of times. Mm-hmm. Just that they know these coaches can recruit to it, and they know for sure, okay, 2024, we're going to be there. We know that for sure. It's locked down. No more. It's been wishy-washy and floating for 2 years. So to actually know it officially it's nice for everybody, for fans, teams, us, everybody. It's nice to know for sure. All right, we'll take a timeout. Come back, got some other housekeeping items for football to get through. And of course, we'll get to some other sports later on. Basketball recap, softball recap, and baseball opens this weekend. So we have lots to get to. We'll get to it coming up here soon on the AllSooners podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's at _Ryan Chapman. Hooves at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, segment 2. Got some housekeeping items to get through here on the football side before we turn over to other sports. In the last segment, kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, tomorrow, watch out on allsooners.com. Brent Venables' press conference is scheduled to go about 40 minutes. It'll go over because he always does. And then we're going to talk to all the mid-year enrollees. Literally all. That's 11 transfers and 14 freshmen, I think. 25 total guys. And we're going to talk to them all. It's going to be insane. Credit to OU for unprecedented access. I mean, that is the anti-Lincoln Riley in every possible way. We couldn't even talk to Caleb Williams after he was playing games and was in the Heisman race. And now we're talking to all these guys before they've even stepped foot on a field for OU. Couldn't be more opposite. So that's coming up tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, you guys want to preview that a little bit? Just, it's insane. It really is insane. I'm sure fans who aren't, obviously covering the team like we are probably can't fully appreciate how insane that is, that we're getting all these guys before they've even practiced at OU.
I'll give you the names. We talked to Venables at 1:45, and after that is just groups of players in groups. The first group is 17 players. The first group, which goes 40 minutes, is 17 players. Y'all sitting down. PJ Adebore, Jackson Arnold, Josh Bates, Peyton Bowen, Trace Ford, Caden Green, Caleb Hicks, Derek LeBlanc, Eric McCarty, Dasan McCulloch, Phil Picciotti, Walter Rouse, Ashton Sanders, Blake Smith, Dalen Smothers, Makari Vickers, and Josiah Wagner. That's just the first group. Like, what? Like, this is – I've been doing this since 2004 at OU, and before that I was at Oklahoma State, and before that I covered Arkansas. I've never seen a coach say, here are all our new guys who won't play a game for 6 months. Yeah. Come talk to them. That's never happened at any school I've ever covered. The group 2 which goes at 345 is Andrell Anthony, Rondell Bothroyd, Jacob Lacey, Devon Sears, Caleb Schaefer, and Austin Stogner. Surely nobody talks to Stogner, right? And then
Welcome
the group
back.
3 closes it up with Kendall Dolby and Reggie Pearson, a couple of DBs. Like, I'm sorry. This is kind of a culture shock for me. I don't know what to do. I was telling my wife last night, none of us have ever done this before. We don't know how to proceed.
Yeah, and looks like they were broken up by like workout groups, which is why the spread was kind of weird. But I liked the planning ahead of saying we're actually going to give 20 minutes in between when the Brent Venables press conference is scheduled to end versus when the players are going to start coming in.
Little cushion.
That's intelligent. Just go ahead and block in some of that time. But no, it's going to be really fascinating because we're going to get to talk to all the freshmen. So we're touching base with them for the first time since, Hoove and Josh talked to a lot of those guys in Orlando. So kind of get their first impressions of winter workouts, things like that. And then, of course, all the transfers. It's going to be really, really enlightening and a ton of fun. There's a lot of different stories from obviously the McCulloughs, Deshaun McCullough coming in and going, okay, you and your brother working under Brent Venables. What's that going to be like? Walter Rouse, the offensive tackle, is like, okay, you were committed to Nebraska and then you weren't. What's that go like? Trace Ford, obviously a Bedlam defection in the transfer portal. That'll be intriguing. But I just think back to last spring where there were a lot of new hires defensively as far as the coaching staff goes. And what we were told is that Brent Venables basically like, well, if you're going to talk to all those guys, you just talk to every assistant. And we got every assistant before spring ball started. Just kind of in a marathon press conference that day. And then as spring, unraveled, we talked to all the assistants again as they finally got to kind of work with the players in practice, stuff like that. So very appreciative that second spring, we have another kind of glass door, peel back the curtain of, you can talk to all the new faces that you want to link up with. And so it's really helpful and really insightful that we kind of get to get their stories before spring starts. And then when we turn that page, we're no longer catching up with them. It can just be like, okay, when we talk to you in spring football, what are you thinking? What's the improvement? What's all that look like? From our perspective, I think it'll be really enlightening for the fan base to be able to get their stories up front, and then we can turn the page to football stuff in the spring.
Brent Venables is an open book. You can't. There's things that in his first year that you can critique certainly on the field, but that part of it you can't. He's extremely welcoming in that regard. So having all the new guys is nuts, and we'll have so much for you in AllSooners. It's gonna be a day tomorrow on AllSooners.com. So keep up with us. You're gonna want to be plugged in to the socials and of course the website because we're gonna have. You get to hear from all these guys. I mean, for fans too. I mean, it's a big part of it for fans. I mean, they don't know these guys, a lot of them, so they get to learn about them a little bit, hear from them, and all that kind of good stuff. And we'll see how that goes tomorrow. It's gonna be a little bit chaotic, but I look forward to it. Elsewhere, some walk-ons. What's up?
It's not just the fans there. I think this is smart. This was pointed out a ton during the Caleb Williams experience, where Lincoln Riley's refusing to let him speak to the media as he's taking college football by storm. In today's era, it's great for the fans, but also for the kids, for the players, it's great exposure for NIL opportunities, things like that. If you're able to get to know them a little bit better through these kind of sessions where we can sit down and talk to a guy for 10 or 15 minutes, I mean, it's just smart all the way around, just from transparency for the fans, for the players. It's beneficial to everyone. And it's unprecedented for us. I just don't know why other schools don't see that value and do that more.
Let's talk about the portal real quick too. Some of these guys, some of these transfers are only going to be here 1 year. This is their shot, so you might as well get them out there as early as possible. February, if you have to, right? And some of these, let's be honest, some of these freshmen are only going to be here 1 year because of the portal. So get them out there as early as possible. I love this idea of Brent's.
Yeah, so it's unprecedented. It really is. So we'll see how it looks and how that goes tomorrow, but we'll have it all for you on AllSooners.com. Should be fun to get to hear from all these guys, transfers and freshmen alike. Shifting over, mentioned it briefly just a second ago. 5 walk-ons were moved from walk-ons to scholarship this week, which is always a cool thing. I'll rattle them off real quick. Kicker Zach Schmidt, who fans are very familiar with, scored a touchdown this year. DB Pierce Hudgens, Gavin Freeman, of course, wide receiver, who made a big impact right away as preferred walk-on. He's now on scholarship. the punter, Josh Plaster, who I assume is going to be the backup punter, but maybe not. I don't know. And then wide receiver Major Melson, who I feel like has been around forever. He's on scholarship now as well. This was cool. It was a cool video. They announced it and put all these guys on scholarship. We'll see what kind of an impact these guys can have. I mean, Zach Schmidt's your starting kicker, and Gavin Freeman, we saw what he did last year, in limited time as he continues to kind of work up. He scored that big touchdown in the opener, so that everybody remembers. Gonna be interesting to see what these guys can do. Obviously, you don't imagine that Venables just giving these away. If he puts them on scholarship, he thinks these guys have outplayed their walk-on roles, or that they're going to outplay their walk-on roles, I guess. So, any takeaways, I guess, from these guys getting moved up?
Yeah, he's repaying their value to the program. Simple as that. Some of them younger guys, some of them a little bit older guys that have been around for 3 or 4 years. On Plaster, it sounds like there could be a competition between him and Luke Alzinga, the punter transfer from Central Michigan, 2-time first-team All-MAC, right? You assume he's going to come in and win the job. But just this week, our man Hangtime, Michael Turk, posted a video saying he beat me in the punting competition. He was talking about Plaster. So that'll be interesting. Shout out Major Melson too, right? He's a guy that I played football in high school with his dad. So he went on. Chris went on to play quarterback at OU for Gary Gibbs. Was an option quarterback from Ada. So I got to give my props there to the Melsons.
Cool to see the teammates' reaction as well. That's always the really awesome part of those videos. Is it's not just the players who are having things change for them and a huge reward to hard work, but just seeing the celebration as they get mobbed in the red room. Pretty cool. But for me, I just hope it means an uptick in seeing Gavin Freeman on the field, because Gavin Freeman, he kind of got caught down the pecking order as a young guy, walk on. Jeff Levy, everybody always spoke so glowingly of him, but it made a ton of sense as to why, hey, they basically ran with, to start the year, it was Farouk, Mims, Weiss, and Willis. To close the year, you subbed Stoops for Weiss, and that was kind of who they ran with. But we saw flashes of special from Gavin Freeman, from the reverse to the laying out diving catch. Was that against Kansas?
Yeah.
So I hope that means that we get to see a lot more of him, as there's a lot of just unproven production coming back behind Stoops and Farouk at the wide receiver room.
100%. So congratulations to all those guys. That's a cool moment, and we'll see what they can do here coming up in the spring, and then obviously into next season. Wrapping up, moving up to the NFL. Did have the Super Bowl over the weekend. Congrats to the latest Super Bowl champs, Creed Humphrey and Orlando Brown. Good to add some rings to their resumes. James Winchester and Blake Bell. It's old news for them. That's their second now with the Chiefs. But Creed and Orlando get their first ones. Jalen, so close. Jalen Hurts played very well in the Super Bowl. He really did. Brutal fumble that hurt him. But other than that, he was really, really good. But he got Mahomes, and he lost to the Chiefs. Takeaways from the Super Bowl, obviously, congrats to the guys who won. There's a lot of OU players all over the field, but Orlando and Creed get the last laugh there, getting the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Blake Bell was inactive for the Super Bowl. Trey Sermon was inactive for the Super Bowl, so they didn't get to dress out for the game. But that would have been cool to get those guys in any role on the field. But I'm thrilled for Creed. When you think about Shawnee, Oklahoma, are you serious? Did you guys see the post from Shawnee High School where they put his senior photo out there? And just brilliant. You're happy for somebody that goes through so many things like that, and to be able to extend that success as a Super Bowl champion. Are you kidding me? That's amazing. Same for Orlando Brown, all the things that he's gone through with his dad passing away at the age of 15. No. He was 15 when his dad passed away. Let me make sure I get that right. And then he transfers, change schools, moves from Baltimore to Atlanta, and then goes from Atlanta. He has a commitment to Tennessee, and at Tennessee they told him, "Wait a minute, you haven't passed any of your tests, your ACT and all that stuff. You haven't." Well, no, not yet. So they pulled his scholarship. He didn't know where he wanted to go. He ended up kind of picking Oklahoma almost out of a hat. He had never contacted them, and yet there he is, calls Bob Stoops, and Bob Stoops says, yeah, we could take a 6'8", 350-pound offensive lineman. The rest is history. And as far as Winchester, he might be him and Tress Way might be my favorite guys that I've covered to go on to the NFL and have success in the NFL. I love watching both those dudes have success.
Yeah, great points there. And then on the flip side, I hope this doesn't get lost to history, but like, why was that an all-time great Super Bowl? Because Jalen Hurts was dropping dimes in ways that we never saw at Oklahoma, right? Rolling out to his left, keeping his eyes downfield, delivering a strike on a big third down, everything. You had a Lane Johnson who basically played the entire playoffs in the last couple of regular season games with a abdominal injury that needed surgery immediately, being able to just say, nope, I'm just going to play through this thing. And you didn't notice that Lane Johnson was like a negative on the right side of the offensive line at all, playing with that injury, all that stuff. So regardless of who ended up with the rings and not, a really, really nice day for Oklahoma as far as what the product was on the field, and all the way down from one half of the quarterback battle, both offensive lines who stood up and played well. There was only one sack, and it was more of a coverage sack. And then the go-ahead game-winning field goal. Got to have Winchester out there with a clutch snap to make that thing happen. Oklahoma's fingerprints were all over that Super Bowl.
Shout out Grant Calcaterra too. Eagles tight end Grant Calcaterra. I don't know if he played or how much he played, or was it just special teams, but he gets one too.
Yeah, I would assume that Tyrese, he was with the Eagles, so obviously doesn't get a Super Bowl ring. But you have Tyrese Robinson and Kenny Brooks are both on the Eagles roster as well. So there's a lot of guys that were in this game. That's for sure. And Jalen played incredibly well. He's going to get himself paid, probably pretty handsomely, quite soon. He's eligible for an extension. And I imagine that's going to be coming down the pike in the near future for him.
Yeah, 4 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, 300 yards passing.
First quarterback to ever have 3 rushing touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, pretty good, incredible,
good stuff. Pretty big time. And then
I got to say, when he was at Alabama, and when he came from Alabama, and when he was at Oklahoma, you could see the improvement. You could see market improvement over the course of his career. You could not have seen him being in the Super Bowl dropping dimes like he was against the Chiefs defense. That just his progress has been sudden and remarkable. Do you guys remember a couple of years back, Colin Kaepernick? He's famous for other things now, but Colin Kaepernick was at this stage, second year of his career, third year of his career, and we're all looking at him going, holy cow, this guy's redefining what quarterbacks look like. And then he hit a wall and kind of dropped off. There wasn't a ton of talent around him after that, but I just hope that Jalen's able to sustain this long term over the course of his career.
Yeah, he's about to hit that next stage where he's going to get that handsome payday, which means there's going to be more asked of you, because if you do that, it means that, guy 2 through 53 on the NFL roster, less money to kind of sink into that. And so it'll be interesting to see if that development arc continues, because it's not just he was this in 2019 at Oklahoma and now look what he is at the Eagles. I mean, if you read Bill Barnwell, Jalen Hurts, the little time he did play as a rookie, he was in top 10 most inaccurate rookies.
Yep.
And so just from that rookie season with the Eagles to Sirianni and Steichen and that staff and what they've done with him to where he was in that Super Bowl, it's just every aspect, every step of the way he's made those improvements, which I think is the most incredible thing. And it's the biggest just tip of the hat to him for what he's been able to do there.
Yeah, next year will be a big year for him to build on it. Offensive coordinators leaving, roster's going to have a lot of new faces because free agency, and they're going to have to pay Jalen. So, this will be the next step, is to build on it. Like both you guys kind of referenced there. A lot of guys have kind of had really great flash in the pan early, and then they get paid. The roster around them gets less good. Coaches leave, and they're not ever quite the same. So hopefully that's not the case with Jalen. And then, to tie it up real quick, too, with Creed and Orlando. That Eagles defense, second most sacks in NFL history, and didn't have any sacks in the Super Bowl, obviously, with those two guys being a big part of it at center and left tackle. Big-time stuff. And Orlando, I think, is a free agent also. So he's also probably going to get paid pretty big time.
Yeah, he's a free agent. I think their sack total was the most going into a Super Bowl in NFL history, and they had 0. Because of that Chiefs offensive line, which is phenomenal. That's why I picked the Eagles, because it wasn't anything about the Chiefs offensive line. It was the Eagles defense, Reddick and those guys. How are you going to keep them out of the backfield off a quarterback who's got a bad wheel? And he re-injured it in the game, and he still was better than ever. Mahomes Mahomes is ridiculous.
He's nuts.
He is.
Like I said, they just got Mahomes. Just is what it is. It happens to the best of us. So NFL's over. Football's over. It's depressing. It's sad. But wait, the XFL is here to save us and to give us some football. Old Bob Stoops, back coaching the Arlington Renegades. That's the very first game on Saturday. The Arlington Renegades and the Vegas Vipers. Saturday afternoon. I think it's a 2 o'clock kick. And Bob Stoops will be coaching the first game of the XFL Part 3, which comes up on Saturday. You got 6 OU guys who wrote about him. Keith Ford, running back. Remember him? Yeah, he's in this league. Jordan Smallwood is in the league. He was in the XFL last time and did some pretty nice things. LaRon Stokes, Jeff Badette, Charleston Rambo, Jordan Evans are all in this league. What are you guys watching for, if anything? What's the intrigue? Which one of these players? Is it just Bob Stoops is your most interesting? What's the headline or storyline that you're going to kind of try and keep up with as this XFL season goes through the spring here?
Prediction: Jordan Evans could be a XFL All-Pro. He's a guy that the Cincinnati Bengals kept signing, kept bringing back, kept trying to get on the field. He's just so athletic and so savvy the way he plays football. I think he's going to be a guy that he's going to be a guy in that league, and he's going to get another shot in the NFL somewhere after having a good year or however long he's in the XFL. I think he's going to get signed. He's probably not going to do the whole year there because he's going to get signed by some NFL team to come into camp. He's a good player. LaRon Stokes left school early. Remember, he had that extra year of eligibility last year, and now he's in the XFL. You don't leave school early to go to the XFL, but he's trying to take that next step, trying to work his way into being somewhere on an NFL roster, whether it's training camp money or practice squad money or landing a spot on a 53-man roster. Those are the guys I think that have the best shot. I'm a little surprised Jordan Smallwood is still playing, I don't know why exactly. He's not a blazer like Jeff Badette, right? He's not a big, huge guy. He's kind of that tweener model where he's got decent speed and he's got decent size, decent athletic ability.
You got to have someone to run your jet sweeps to, Hoove.
Ooh, touchy.
You think Stoops is going to run a lot of jet sweeps to Jordan Smallwood? I don't think so.
I think he has a little PTSD, as most Oklahoma fans.
And then Keith Ford too. I mean, Keith Ford. What? You're still playing football? That's impressive. He's dedicated to the craft for sure.
Yeah, just full transparency. The thing I'm most interested in the XFL is if they keep the chip in the football for the first downs. Like, other than that, like what I remember of the XFL was a fine product for what it was. The biggest difference for the XFL as opposed to the USFL is that the XFL actually had fans in the stands, which helped. The USFL was a miserable watch because it was like all in Birmingham and no one was there ever, and it was hard for me to get juiced about that. I think Rambo has a shot to come in as first off, I think younger guys like that are going to shine early on in this league just because a guy that is incredibly hungry to be like, no, the NFL missed on me. I need to come in and show out. And he had a good last year at Miami. But I'm in full wait and see mode with the XFL because I love football. There's a reason that one football league has dominated and the spring leagues have traditionally struggled to exist. And that's because you can tell when you're watching bad football. And to go from that Super Bowl into the XFL is going to be an adjustment.
It's going to be not a step down. It's going to be falling down a staircase down.
Well, the thing that always kills these leagues, and I do think the XFL is a better product than the USFL. Not that it's a big two 10 out of 10s going against each other there, but I think that kills these leagues to me is always the quarterback play. Is always so. Yep. I mean, the NFL teams struggle to find quarterbacks, find enough. You know what I mean? So these other leagues have a hard time, and so we'll see. There's some recognizable names in the XFL quarterback ranks. AJ McCarron, guys like that. But we'll see. I'm with Ryan though. Charleston Rambo is the one. I mean, he's 23 years old. 23. That's it. I mean, he's got a lot of football left in him, and if he can light up the league. I mean, we've seen guys before. I mean, just in the XFL when it only played 5 weeks the last time before COVID shut it down. And still guys came out of that. Taylor Heineke, PJ Walker, and those are quarterbacks, but still other guys too that did enough to get noticed. NFL teams picked them up, and they're still playing in the NFL. So Charleston Rambo is a big one for me. And, of course, Bob Stoops. I mean, it's always funny to see Bob on the sideline wearing the Arlington Renegades get up. It's funny, and good luck to him. We'll see what he does. He doesn't have Landry Jones this time, which that was hilarious last time around because Landry was like the most self-deprecating athlete I've ever heard. They would interview him at halftime and be like, yeah, well, I stink, but we're having fun, So they don't have that this time. But it's fun. It's fun to watch. It's fun to flip too. Nobody's gonna just build their day around it, but it's fun to flip too. Why not? So that's.
You think Rambo? You guys think Rambo has a chance to be the next Cavante Turpin? Explode his way from USFL MVP into the Dallas Cowboys?
I think it's possible.
When you look at it though, like the two profiles of guys that usually made the jump were quarterback or skill position, just because like. In the trenches, if you can play, the NFL is going to find you. They'll stash you on the practice squad, stuff like that. So that's no knock to anyone playing in the trenches. It's just if you can cut it, usually like the NFL, you can never have too many of those guys. And so for me, it's like someone like a Jordan Evans who battled injury a ton, like on top of kind of in and out with Cincinnati, or you're looking at wide receiver play, frankly, from the OU contingent as far as guys that can maybe open another door for themselves.
Yeah. Shout out Jeff Badet, too. That guy just talk about having some stick-to-itiveness. He has been on lots of different teams, different leagues. That guy loves to play, and he's not going to stop until he can't anymore. So shout out to him, too, for giving another go at it in the XFL. I kind of respect that. So, all right, XFL this weekend. We'll see what Bob Stoops and these guys can all do. I'm not going to guarantee an XFL segment every week on the show, but
do we need to be on the lookout for a future Oklahoma interim wide receivers coach out of the guys that are playing in the XFL? Maybe stash that for 2 or 3 years down the line.
That's true. LaDainian Washington, XFL legend. That's that's a good point. Maybe it is Jeff Badet. You don't know. Maybe we'll see how that shakes out down the road. Hopefully Emmett Jones works out better than that, but you never know. You never know how things are going to go. All right, we'll take a time out. We'll come back. Other sports to get to. Basketball, of course, recap. They actually won a big game last night. We'll talk about that. And Porter Moser, he addressed the rumors. We'll talk about that as well. Softball, baseball, opening weekends, women's basketball as well. All that coming up next right here on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 174. Hit some other sports here on the way out. Send you into your post-Valentine's Day weekend, if that's a thing. Start with men's basketball. So we'll get to the Moser, Notre Dame stuff in a second. Wild things in his press conference earlier this week. But we'll start with the game last night against Kansas State. I mean, what can you say? They beat a good team. They did. I mean, Kansas State, number 12 in the nation coming in. OU had lost 7 straight Big 12 games after they had gotten splattered all over the place by Kansas on Saturday at the Lloyd Noble Center. There was like 5 people in the crowd in the stands last night, but it didn't matter. OU played well. It was kind of an ugly game. Lots of fouls. That officiating crew was calling everything, but they did enough, and they got the win. Groves played well. Tanner, that is. Jalen Hill played well. Grant Sherfield played well. Got some contributions from some young guys, and they got a win they had to have. Now, look, OU's still way off the bubble here, but the reality is, no, not sunshine pumping at all, that the schedule is so ridiculous that if OU stacks some wins, they have a chance to climb back into the conversation. They really do. Step one was winning yesterday, and they did that, and we'll see where they go from here if that actually turns anything around. But good win. They needed it.
Yeah, if they get this to like 16 wins with the schedule that they have left,
they might.
Is that going to be enough?
Yeah.
They have a chance, but guys, they got to – I was thinking of this today. I was like emptying the dishwasher, and some thought just shot into my head like an arrow, right? That's the frustrating thing, is the phrase that OU fans are right now uttering to themselves over and over and over. Because they can play like this against Alabama. They can play like this against Kansas State. But they can't play like this on a consistent basis. They can't play like this night in and night out. 2 games in a row. That's the frustrating thing, I would think, for OU fans.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to win a bunch of games, and it's just not going to happen. What's the 2 consistencies between Alabama and Kansas State that you haven't gotten elsewhere? Alabama, you knocked down 10 threes. Kansas State, you knocked down a season-high 11 threes. elsewhere, it just hasn't happened for Oklahoma. If they wanted to make the tournament, they needed to close out probably two of Iowa State at home, Texas at home, Baylor at home when you had all of those close opportunities and couldn't get it done. So it's a feel-good moment for them last night that Tanner Groves talked about the desperation of not even worrying about what the record is, but these are his final games in college, wanting to go out the right way, stuff like that. It's encouraging, and I know OU fans don't want to hear this. I do think it's still a testament to Porter Moser and the coaching staff that the team has not mentally folded, because if you had lost the locker room, none of this would have happened. They wouldn't have bounced back and at least been in a position to cut it down to 5 points with 3 or so minutes left in Baylor and Waco, all that stuff. But I guess the encouraging stuff is you got good minutes from Otega Owe, who's a young guy. Milos Uzon was good last night, another young guy that it looked like he had hit a freshman wall. Sherfield was really engaged, so if he comes back next year, then that's a guy that hadn't quit on this coaching staff, this team. That's what you're looking for, because they're going to have to basically win all their games but one probably the rest of the way and make noise in Kansas City to make it to the tournament. And what we've talked about all year is that their non-conference is not going to hold up the same way it held up last year to help bolster them. So there's a ton of work they still have to do. But like Porter Moser said, you can't talk about any of that unless you started off with a win against Kansas State. So that was the baby step they needed to take.
I was really struck last night watching those guys come off the floor of just the relief in their face, more than even, excitement about the win or being pumped up, just kind of like, thank God we needed to win a game really bad. 7 straight Big 12 losses, many of them blowouts. So to come back, like Ryan said, you got to give Porter credit, you too. Number 12 team comes in. You took it to them, especially in that second half. They're still playing hard somehow. They are. They haven't quite given up. You got off to a good start, which has been so important. We've talked about that many times. Need to get off to a good start. This team has not done a good job of bouncing back after they get off to bad starts. They got off to a good start. They rode it. They hung tough through some K-State runs. They got a good win. And we'll see if they can do at Texas on Saturday. I mean, they're going to be big underdogs in that game, but if you find a way to steal that one, who knows? As Porter said last night in his postgame, crazy things can happen in February and March. So we'll see what happens this weekend.
Josh,
go ahead.
Say what you said earlier when we were on the break about the fans and the feedback you had on your tweet, because
Sure.
we discussed it briefly during the break. I wanted to expound on it a little bit here.
Well, I was joking about it because back, I think it was after OU lost to TCU by 1,000 in Fort Worth, I made a comment on Twitter about, OU can probably stop complaining about the fans when the product is like this. I think I even said that on the pod that week too, because you just have no leg to stand on when the crowds are bad and you're playing like this. Now, last night, the crowd was horrible. It was probably the worst Big 12 attendance for a conference game that I have ever seen. The games I've been there, there was nobody at that game last night. Ryan can attest. It was 50-50 with K-State fans. Jerome Tang even made a comment about it in his postgame, basically like, we had more fans here than OU did. I made a comment about the crowd being bad, and people got upset, saying, "Well, they're not going to come if the product is this bad." You can't have it both ways. Which way is it? Either you support them no matter what, or the product has to be better. And we'll see how it goes from there. But the crowd was very, very thin last night, all time thin.
It is a chicken or egg thing, right? Of good product, fans come in, make it exciting. Okay, well, how do you recruit guys that want to play in that environment? You have to have the environment first. This is just where OU basketball is. Flip on the TV on Monday night, a awful Texas Tech team who is in the cellar, exact same Big 12 record as Oklahoma, and Lubbock was just a freaking loony bin for Texas. And Oklahoma's had that this year. Oklahoma packed it out, the fans did, for Texas. Loss. The students came back, packed it out. The students did. Great showing against Baylor. Loss. Alabama, you have the crowd that you want. They capitalize, huge win. You get the perfect storm of lack of storm against Oklahoma State, and the Cowboys run you out of your own building. For the fans, you get all the passes in the world. My expectation is for no one to come back into the Lloyd Noble Center to support that team after what happened in Bedlam. So it's been a weird year for Oklahoma because it felt like at times in those moments they got the fan support they wanted. And Porter Moser talked about this after the Baylor game, that he was disappointed for the students because he got the student section he wanted and they weren't able to deliver a win. And he was thankful they came back against Alabama, thankful they came back against Oklahoma State. Oh, you didn't get it done. They got ran out of their own building against Oklahoma State. So you shouldn't expect any fans the rest of the season. And no one gets to complain if there are no fans. It's just I don't think, Josh, you were picking on fans or anything. It was just we are here.
Yeah.
This is the scene. You know what I mean? It's not a negative either way. I think everyone totally gets why.
Right. Josh, after the Bedlam game, you used one of my favorite words for how they played with such a good crowd on the floor, good crowd in the arena, and that was they squandered that chance. They squandered that opportunity. That's the perfect word for you build that momentum against Alabama and bring everybody back for the Bedlam game. And it's like, okay, we got this thing figured out. Let's go. And then you play like you did that night with that many fans in the last, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, there was like nobody in the arena.
It was the under 8 timeout that the arena emptied. And that's where Oklahoma State got all the Twitter clips that they want, because the Oklahoma State fans who showed out as well stayed and got their SEC chants that are with no rebuttal, their Orange Power chants. You ran your own fan base out of the building at the under 8 timeout.
Yeah, they basically playing that way. I don't know any other way to say it than just be an a-hole and say you don't deserve a good crowd when you play that way.
Yeah, which I agree. I made the comment that the crowd was horrendous last night. But I don't mean that, and I get it, it's hard to convey. I don't blame any fans for a Valentine's Day night game on a Tuesday at 8 o'clock for not going out to see a 12-13 basketball team. I don't blame them at all. It was it was real rough. I'm curious to see what it's like next Tuesday with Texas Tech coming in, the other team that's at the bottom of this conference. It's not going to be pretty that night either, I would imagine. But there is a little bit of positivity right now. Around that team. They did get the big win, and it comes one day after Porter Moser. We talked about it on last week's show. The Notre Dame rumors are flying, that supposedly he's interested. Notre Dame's interested. We talked about it on the show last week. It makes sense for Porter. It did, to make that move to Notre Dame if it were to happen. There's a lot of reasons why. You can check out that show if you want to hear them all, but no need to rehash them. But he got asked about it on Monday, and he vehemently denied that there's any interest in him going to Notre Dame. He said no interest like 10 times. He said that Oklahoma is home like 10 times. And he said unequivocally it's a false report saying that I expressed any interest in that job. So it wasn't quite the Lincoln Riley, I'm not going to LSU. It was way more impassioned than that. I believe him. It would be stunning to me if he left after that. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's on AllSooners.com. It's like 2 minutes of him just denying that. He seemed to me like he was waiting for somebody to ask him. He wanted the chance to talk about it.
Yeah. It was overdue.
It was overdue.
The question.
So I there you go. There you have it. He expressed his commitment to the team. So we'll see how it goes from there. But I think he's probably staying after that.
It made sense to talk about it and to ask about it, because why? Because he's a Catholic kid from Chicago, right? And that's exactly how he started his 2-minute ramble was, I'm a Catholic kid from Chicago. I got a lot of respect for Notre Dame, of course. But then he went on to say, the Sooners, I have not pursued it, nor do I have any interest. Oklahoma is my home. The Sooners are my home. He said, I'm in the beginning process of turning this thing around, and in the process of NIL and the transfer portal, I'm trying to do my best to turn this thing around and build a culture here. As well as the COVID years he mentioned, which has got to be still a challenge when you look back on it. He said, this place means a lot to me. I'm home. The people here, the fan base, I've spent so much time with the student body, with the fan base. So no, I don't have interest. Unequivocally, he said, that is a false report.
Yeah.
Unequivocally. Said it twice. He said saying that I pursued the Notre Dame job. Unequivocally. So nor do I want to. I mean, that's the door is closed. It's been locked and it's been sealed, if you ask me on that one.
Yeah, we've joked a lot about the similarities ever since Brent Venables has been hired. We've talked about between Moser and Venables and the Spider-Man meme of the Spider-Mans pointing at each other, from the passion, the way that they run things. But like the other thing too that I think you've noticed is Like, Porter Moser is for real about, I'm here and I'm trying to build that connection. And for him, that connection's with the students. You get the students out. Those are the ones that bring the rowdiness. They're the ones that make it a fun atmosphere. And if it's a fun atmosphere, that's when everybody else comes, all that stuff. And so I think that's no shock that Porter Moser kind of doubled down on his relationships in Norman and things like that. But yeah, this was different than, I know a lot of people hone in on the Lincoln Riley LSU question after Bedlam, but when it had first come up, I think it was Ryan Aber that asked him earlier that year, and Lincoln just did the play the hits of, this is a special play, all the stuff like that. Porter, it was different. It was just different about the defiance almost of, I understand why you're asking me that. I understand why the reports are out there. And he wasn't there to disrespect the reports. He was just like, I'm just telling you now those reports are false and we're done with it. And so that was different. If he leaves for Notre Dame after that, that feels a lot different after that speech. I just don't see it happening.
Well, especially if he would have come out and said, let me stop you right there. I'm not going to be the next coach at Notre Dame.
Right.
Everybody's alarms go off and say, holy hell, where's he going?
Nobody's buying that anymore. Yeah.
He's going to USC.
Yeah, because he denied Notre Dame by name many times, but he also, like you read, he called Oklahoma home many times as well. Talk about how much he's put into trying to turn this around. I definitely don't think he's leaving. I give him a lot of credit for answering the question the way he did, because, it's a tough thing to ask a coach. You think there's a decent to good chance he's just going to get mad and bite your head off, and then that's that. He gave 2 solid minutes and even made a joke afterward about it, like, hope that's clear, with a smirk, not like an angry, like a hope that's clear. Hope everybody can stop talking about that now, please, because I don't want that out there. So credit to him. Last night, in very long Kruger fashion after they win, he's walking around and he's thanking all the fans that were there, which weren't many, but he thanked the ones that were there, saying, thank you guys for coming. He has said it many times. Ryan can attest how much he wants to pack it out all the time. He said last year, remember, Ryan, I'm on a mission to fill up that arena, is exactly what he said. He did it this year, but they didn't win the games, and you're not going to keep it when that happens. So we'll see where he goes from here. I don't think he hasn't won the fans back yet. Because that was the other part of the question was, you feel like you've lost the fan base? And he said, I hope's not, but he kind of has right now. He has to win them back. Right now. He says all the right things, and he does he carries himself the right way and all that. But the bottom line is OU fans above all else care about winning, and they're not right now.
Do you think he would win the fans back if they were second in the nation in scoring and first in the nation in assists and averaged 14, 15, 16 three-pointers a game?
But same.
Like the women's team?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, it
counts to play a style of basketball that is attractive and appealing to the eye. You don't have to be the Golden State Warriors, but it helps to be able to strive to play in that fashion.
Here, like, the thing is, you can play like Virginia if you're winning and you're in the top 15, and you haven't won yet. You haven't been in the top 15. I'd be interested to see if this offseason Oklahoma goes out and lands a bona fide center in the transfer portal, if that's enough for Oklahoma fans to say, all right, I'll give you this last year in the Big 12. Let's see what you've got. Just because that to me feels like just the easy layup that Porter gets pounded on all the time. And that's because the roster's his control, and whatever reason, NIL, Tanner Groves, hard to recruit over him. Like, he was unable to get in a center. And I think that's a lot of Oklahoma fans feel demoralized because it's so easy to just point to, well, that's a matchup that every team can exploit.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a big off season for them for sure. And we'll see how they can add to it. And I mean, the fans did give them a lot of, even the Kansas crowd last Saturday wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't packed. It wasn't that bad. A lot of Kansas fans, but last night it was empty in there, man. It was rough, but they won the game. So we'll see how they go from here. 2 home games left: Texas Tech and TCU. We'll see what they look like in due time. I don't think we're getting NIT games in Norman this year. We please hope. That's more of a hope than really a think. Hopefully that's not the situation. If it happens, it happens. But let's pray for that. Flipping over to the women, who are trying to get postseason games in their place in Lloyd Noble this year like they did last year. They're doing a good thing. They've won 4 games in a row. They have Texas Tech tonight. They've kind of feasted on a little bit of a lighter spot in the schedule, which is what Jenny Bronchick has done. I mean, in her 2 years, has Oklahoma lost any games to teams that that's a bad loss? Like, they only really lose to good teams, and that's what they've done the last couple of weeks. They've taken advantage of a lighter spot in the schedule. They're on a 4-game winning streak. Look to be in good shape. They're in the top 15 in the rankings, trying to get home games in the tournament like I just referenced. Playing pretty good ball right now. We'll see how they finish the season strong, though.
They play Texas Tech tonight in the pink uniforms?
Yes, in the pinks, which are really a nice uniform. It's sharp, the pink. Yeah, I like it.
Looks good. But just to reference what I said earlier, I mean, guys, they play basketball the right way. They're fun to watch. They don't have that we've talked about this in the past. They don't have that dominating athletic post, but they've got players who can put the ball in the basket from the post area, right? Get offensive rebounds, dump downs, check downs, whatever, and put the ball in the basket. That's what you need if you're Oklahoma, because they share the ball. A couple of games ago, I can't remember who they played, but it's like 5 different players had 4 assists or more. What? Who plays college basketball like that? You only get 40 minutes. And they pass the ball, they share the ball, they set screens for each other. It's good basketball to watch.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. Last year, their struggles came in those ranked matchups, but remember when Ioka Lee at Kansas State, that was a Kansas State team that was just receiving votes at the time, and she absolutely dominated Oklahoma in Manhattan. They lost a game to Texas Tech in the Lloyd Noble Center by 10 points last year. And in their regular season finale, they lost a game to a mediocre Kansas team in the Lloyd Noble Center. I know by then they were out of the Big 12 race, but that's what Oklahoma's turned around so far this year. The losses they've had were a Baylor team that's not Baylor of the past, but a Baylor team that's playing a lot better at the beginning of the conference slate in Norman. They got that one back in Waco. Went to and handled business in Manhattan, stuff like that. And they've set themselves up that Oklahoma should be able to handle the rest of this schedule and set up a de facto Big 12 regular season championship game against Texas in their home finale. That's what should happen. That's what Oklahoma needs to do. Because I haven't seen, did NCAA release their March Madness Super 16 yet this week? Because last week, Texas was 12 or 13 and Oklahoma was nowhere to be found. And that comes from the committee. That's the committee that does that. So that just shows you that the Sooners need to continue to stack these wins they should have, because they have no margin for error if they want to host again, which is definitely on the table, not out of the question by any means, but you got to win these games. The only acceptable loss the rest of the way in the regular season is to Texas, and they need to win that game too.
Really interested to see what they do in the postseason, Big 12 tournament, and obviously the NCAA tournament. That's just, not to discount what they're doing in the regular season, but we're all just looking ahead. What are they going to do when the lights are bright? Last year was disappointing. They got ran out by Baylor and Kansas City, got ran out by Notre Dame at Lloyd Noble Center in the tournament. How do they bounce back this time around? The whole season's building toward the postseason, so that's what we're looking forward to. Here in just a few weeks from now. Season is dwindling down in college basketball. Postseason kind of sneaks up on you a little bit. Switching over to Diamond Sports to wrap up here. Softball opening weekend. They did go 5-0. It got hairy a couple of times. They got pushed. They had a couple of really close games. Had one game go to extras at 0-0 against Liberty. Obviously, Ryan, this is your account, so we'll lean on you heavy here. But, hey, 5-0 is 5-0. They played some good teams. I don't think you have much to complain about from an Oklahoma fan. I mean, the offense had some big games. Pitching had some big games. I think overall, I mean, you're 5-0. You went to a good event and you're 5-0. I don't know. I'm sure the bar is so high that people will still find things to nitpick, right? I'm sure, but they're 5-0.
5-0. You've beaten 3 ranked teams. You've played 3/4 almost close games. I guess 2 of them were run rules, so you played 3 close games. It was funny. I was covering the game Sunday, and San Jose State, and Patty Haley Lee was batting, I think, third, and she came in and she got a big, line drive, 2-run hit, 2-run single. I think might have been a double. I'm having trouble remembering exactly all the details right now, but that's your transfer from Texas A&M, who put up the big numbers at A&M. You're like, okay, I see something here. Next at bat, Patty subs her out. Patty pinch hits her, and you're like, whoa, what are you doing? And I leaned over my wife and I said, clearly Patty doesn't know what she's doing. She's lost this team. People are going to come after it, right? What does Grace Green do? She hits a grand slam. It was amazing. It was like Patty knows exactly. I was only kidding, of course. I would never say such a thing or believe such a thing. But yeah, that's the thing. You got your hot hitter coming in, your transfer hitter, your 3-hole. You're pulling her in her second at bat. Yeah, because Grace Green's going to hit a 4-run bomb. The story of the weekend for me was probably Nicole May pitches 8 innings on a scoreless start to beat Liberty, and then the 2 days later comes back and pitches 3 1/3 innings in relief, scoreless. Again, she pitched 11 1/3 scoreless innings, had a bunch of strikeouts, minimal number of walks, but she was amazing in starting, and she was amazing in relief for Jordy Ball. Should have been Big 12 Pitcher of the Week. I'll say it that way. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Nicole May is going to get judged unfairly against, like, everyone's like, oh, we're just taking for granted that Oklahoma's pitching staff has been just lights out because, again, they were really good. Here are my couple of thoughts. First off, everyone freaked out at the Liberty game. Liberty's going to be freaking good. They're going to sneak up on a lot of people. That does not excuse what Oklahoma did as far as their inability to come through with runners in scoring position. That was kind of the glaring hole there. And for me, on paper, and what we said last week before the season still rings true. On paper, top to bottom, there is more power in this lineup than what Oklahoma had last year. The difference is Jocelyn Allo, her superpower was not that she's the best hitter I've ever seen in this game. It was not the intimidation, mental edge when she steps into the box and opposing pitchers just look uncomfortable and all that. Jocelyn Allo's superpower is that she was one of the most clutch athletes I've ever covered. When you needed something from Jocelyn Allo, just think back to last year, regular season, her last regular season game at Marita Hines Field. What does she do? Go ahead, grand slam against Oklahoma State. Like, you just needed some production. She hits a grand slam. You think about UCLA, the elimination game, Jocelyn Allo just revenge game with the hatred of 1,000 suns, a couple homers, including a grand slam. Game 1 of the championship series comes up a couple of homers, big time spots. That's what Oklahoma's lineup is missing. And that's going to be Tiare Jennings is going to be scouted like she's never been scouted before. She still had a pretty good weekend, but it's going to be the clutch hitting. That's what Jocelyn Allo brought, and that's what this team's going to have to find. Things to be concerned. So I'm not as concerned about that. That's going to be a process. Haley Lee was awesome. Jordy Ball did not look good by Jordy Ball standards against Washington. Yeah. That'll be something to monitor. It was really, really cold. It was unexpectedly cold. Oklahoma was not ready for the cold as far as the conditions they were playing in. Jordy looked awesome against Duke. So that's going to be what we need to track was that the outlier for Jordy Ball, or is that she maybe is not the same pitcher coming off that forearm injury? That to look at. And then, yeah, Alex Taraco, no one's going to talk about her. She was awesome. And for Nicole May to stick with this program, she could go and walk in and be the ace at 95% of programs in the country, to get perceived as, hey, they brought in, obviously Jordy Ball, but Hope Troutwine as well. Last year, that 8 innings didn't phase Nicole May. They brought in Alex Taraco again this year. That didn't phase Nicole May. And I think that's kind of the really cool thing in the era of the portal. We should be celebrating those athletes that are like, no, I love it here, and I'm not going to pitch 200 innings, and that's okay because I want to be a part of this team.
Probably a good thing in the long run, too, that they had some close calls, and you had to, you probably get a lot more out of, I think Patty said as much, you get a lot more out of those than just run ruling everybody. So 5-0 weekend for them.
And that Longwood game, I know everyone's going to look at the Baylor game. Hey, Longwood is a program that pops up and has major upsets. They already have one this year against, was it Florida State? So that Longwood game should be does this team have the right mindset, come out and dominate? If so, that's where you go, okay, first weekend, shaking off the cobwebs, moving forward. Because across college softball, Oklahoma, UCLA, it wasn't 8 run rules between the two of them, but like they're the class, and you saw Alabama dropped a game, Florida State dropped a game, Oklahoma State lost to Maryland, Texas stallballed for a tie against Kentucky, which was absurd. Like, the parity is there, except for Oklahoma and UCLA through one weekend.
Yeah, next up, the Getterman Classic, which is in Waco. Yeah, you mentioned it. Longwood to start, Stephen F. Austin, Army, and then Baylor. That's what they got this weekend. So keep with AllSooners for recaps of those games. Probably going to be 9-0 after the weekend based off that, but we'll see how it shakes out. You never know. You never know. Like Ryan said, Longwood is coming off a big win just a few days ago. So we'll keep up with that coming up this weekend for Patty Gasso's team. Wrapping up, baseball opening weekend is this weekend. Ping on Friday, opening day. California Baptist comes to town, to Norman to start the season. I've been told that they are good enough that you can't just sleepwalk through the series, basically. And then they have Air Force on Monday to kind of wrap up the homestand to open the season here. Excited to see it. They had media day on Saturday, so I got to hear from Skip along with 4 players getting the start of this new season. Going to be lots of new faces. I mean, anybody who was OU Baseball picked up a lot of new fans last year in that run to Omaha, and they probably haven't really kept up with it too much. Now it's February, and they're like, okay, OU Baseball's back. Let's see what they're doing. You're not going to recognize many of the players. A lot of the guys who are big parts of that run last year are gone. Peyton Graham, Jimmy Crooks, Tanner Treadaway. I mean, the whole rotation, the whole pitching staff, Trevin Michael, the closer. They're all gone. But Skip Johnson has done a really good job of reloading. They're extremely athletic. Pitching staff is going to be good again. They're going to be a good team, and I'm excited to see what they look like coming up on Friday. I'll be there for opening day against California Baptist. Hoove, you were in Omaha with me?
That's what makes baseball so impossible, is because
it's hard.
There are so many avenues for the players to leave and move on to professional baseball, move on the transfer portal, whatever, junior college after 1 year, whatever you got. There's so many avenues for them to leave. And when you think about the sustained excellence, like we talked about in the opening segment in the SEC, how those teams are able to reload with so much talent and then send that much talent into the professional ranks every year and then reload again. It's unbelievable. It's amazing the work that they do. So, OU caught lightning in a bottle last year, and Skip did he get a contract extension, Josh?
I think so.
I believe he did. I believe he was allowed to hire a couple of coaches, and they got nice contracts as well, as I recall. I mean, we're going back to the summer here, so I'm having to play the thing back in my head. But yeah, Skip's he's got to reload. He lost a lot of talent. He lost a lot of not just talent, but experienced talent off that team last year that we covered in Omaha.
Yeah, here's always the weird thing with Skip is that he's such a good recruiter. His best recruits never play in Oklahoma because they go straight to the MLB draft, and they go straight to the draft at a really high level. And so when you look at the last 3 or 4 years, 2020 was going to be a trip to Omaha, and that got taken from him. They didn't get to see that, didn't get the flash of being able to go to Omaha and be on the TV sets of recruits, stuff like that. 2021 was a tough reload. Last year, they reloaded again. It was awesome. And so we know this staff can develop those players. It's just a matter of continuing to hit. That's kind of the point you were talking about, Hoove, is that it's really difficult to every year hit on all those JUCO guys coming in. But the one thing we know is that like the recruiting's not an issue for Skip in the way that other programs you talk about. Like, no, he recruits so well that the turnover is a byproduct of both his good recruiting and his development. And so I'll just be interested to see how that thing comes together. And that's what's really exciting. And for me is that that the product Oklahoma puts out in the first month of the season is not going to look close to what they are come May. It's just a matter of how good is that starting point, and are they going to start at a level where we're talking about playing your way back into the hunt for Omaha, as opposed to they need to make those improvements to be competitive, to be a regional host or kind of get in. And that was the conversation in 2021, is they needed to make those improvements just to get into the tournament.
Yeah, and that's what I would preach for OU fans, kind of trying to get some expectations if they're curious when I'm going to forecast what the team's going to be like. I would preach patience to start this year because there is so many new faces. I think that, and you got to remember last year, revisionist history on last season, they didn't really hit their stride until about the middle of April. And that's where they just started to take off. That's when they found all those freshmen that were big parts that are back, Jackson Nicholas, Wallace Clark, John Spikerman. Those guys all didn't play hardly at all until the middle of the season last year. So you got to give Skip some time to move the chess pieces around and figure out what lineup works, what rotation works, the bullpen hierarchy. It takes some time. You can't really figure that stuff out until you start playing games. It's just hard to find it. And they have new faces here that are exciting. Bryce Madron, people are really excited about. He had a massive fall. He's going to be in right field almost certainly. Dakota Harris is your new shortstop. Big shoes to fill there for Peyton Graham. Easton Carmichael, your new catcher, filling in for Jimmy Crooks. So, I mean, you have guys who are stepping into big roles here right away. So give them some time, I guess, would be my biggest advice for OU fans coming into this season.
Yeah. That mid-April stretch you're talking about is when we started writing the game recaps as Oklahoma won its second straight Big 12 series. Oklahoma won its third straight Big 12 series, fourth straight, fifth straight Big 12 series. And then it was like, wait a minute, they're in second place in the conference race from, down in the bottom area. They climbed and they just kept winning conference series every weekend. So that was an impressive run. Something that I want to touch on, Jada Coleman said in her media day press conference was, we may have a lot of new faces that you guys don't know. You guys think that we just roll out there on day one and start playing together. She said, we've been playing together since the fall. We went through fall ball scrimmages, practices, all this stuff. So I think that relates to baseball as well. A lot of new faces that we don't know, a lot of new faces that we haven't seen practice and haven't seen play. But these guys have been together now since the start of school back in August. So that may not be as big a deal as you would think, but it almost ends up invariably being a big deal once the season gets here and you start losing close games, or you start blowing leads, or you start committing errors at the corner, whatever it is. You look up and you say, well, he's a new guy. You start making that excuse for him. So they have been together, but the fact of the matter, all due respect to Jada Coleman, they haven't played together. They haven't been in those fires together.
Yeah. The thing I just love about Skip is when you talk to him, it's hard to come away and and this is not like he makes the game sound so simple. And I think that's part of like the success is that Skip's like, look, I was listening to him. He was talking with Eddie Radosevich and Todd Lisby on the franchise. And he was just like, my advice to the pitchers is to get a photo of a glove, blow it up as a fat head, and put that on your mirror in your bathroom. And then basically it's just, all I can tell you is just throw the ball to the glove. Every single time, if you just throw the ball to the glove and trust your stuff, things are going to work out for you. And so I think that's why the teams get better and better and better, is that for the most part, a credit to that coaching staff is early season errors, things not being perfect, doesn't stick with the team because they have the magic sauce of getting through to the guys to almost relax them and be like, just play. You wouldn't have got here to Oklahoma if you couldn't play baseball. Now you just need to play.
It's going to be fun. Look forward to getting
to it. Josh, real quick, sure. I'm not making a prediction here that OU's going back to Omaha or that they're not going back to Omaha. I'm just saying, if they do, potential game changer for you and me. My nephew bought a Keurig.
Oh, wow. No more scooters
every day anymore for coffee. They had a no coffee policy in the house or whatever it was. He said, we got a Keurig for you guys. So if you come back,
well, hey,
coffee is all the coffee you can drink.
Hopefully they can find their way back.
That's great news for me, because I was sitting here going, do I need to book my vacation for right after softball closes down? Or am I going to draw I get to be Josh's number 2 and let him direct me all throughout Omaha? I didn't know how that was going to go.
It was
to be decided.
It was a journey. It was a journey there last year.
What was the final total? 15 days? We were in almost 16 days.
It was like 2 full weeks. Yeah, I mean, it was a long time. It was a long time.
It's the longest I've ever been on any trip in the history of my career, and I'm an old guy now, so that's saying something.
It was nuts, and we'll see what they can do this year. I do expect Oklahoma to be a tournament team this year. I'll say that. Yeah, as far as it is so hard to get to Omaha. So hard. You got to be red hot to get there, and so I'm hesitant to predict that for any team, let alone a team replacing as much Oklahoma is. This rotation is going to be fun. Cale Davis, Oklahoma State transfer, he's probably going to be your number 1, at least to start the season. Your Friday night guy, your opening day starter, coming up here in a couple days, and then they got some youngsters, some like freshmen who are going to be starting games, I think, for this team. So in the pitching rotation, so. That'll be fun. Give them time, give them patience. And I think this is a really big year to kind of close here on Baseball Preview. This is another really big year. Last year when we did this show, I talked about how big of a year it was for Skip in the program because of the move to the SEC. And last year, 2021 was really not what they wanted. Below 500, missed the tournament, all that stuff we talked about. This year's really big again, but for a totally different reason, because they have all this momentum off of last year. They picked up so many new fans last year. So many people found OU baseball for the first time last year in that run to Omaha. They got all those donations. They have all these facility renovations that are planned out for the SEC move. Oklahoma is looked at as a baseball program on the rise nationally, as one of those ones that's really climbing and going to continue to go. So you need to follow that up with another good season. I'm not saying you need to get back to Omaha or anything like that, but you know, it would be a shame for them to have a tough season and they kind of lose a lot of that. If you can return to the tournament, maybe host a regional, that would be huge to continue that upward climb. So we'll see how that goes. It starts on Friday. I guess California Baptist. Looking forward to getting back out to the park. Feels good. Spring just feels good in general. I think that's it for us. We'll be back next week, wrapping up baseball opening weekend along with softball, basketball action, as well as all the latest from football as per usual. We'll be back next Wednesday at normal time. We'll let you know all that we heard from Venables and the mountains of players that we're going to get tomorrow down there in Norman. You can catch that show next week right back here, same time, same place, on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. Let's post on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. You can watch all the shows as well on his YouTube page, John Hoover Media. That's it for us. We'll be back next Wednesday. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.